Head over to losingmymind.com to check out our latest song, Genocide. Support our work. Now, onto the show. From the Daily Wire. Superstar Katy Perry confirms she's voting for Rick Caruso. This is a guy, he's technically a Democrat, but he was a Republican until he decided, like a couple weeks before he decided to be, is that what happened?
I think so.
He was a Republican, then he's like, I'm going to run Democrat, switched parties, then ran. And now you got this big old picture of Katy Perry voting for what is effectively a Republican. So what does that mean? Does that mean there's hope? She's got, is that Jesus tattooed on her wrist? Mm-hmm. I mean, I'd be willing to bet that she's probably votes Republican in secret anyway.
She might. The other thing with Rick Caruso is that he owns the Grove Mall, which is the best mall in LA, and it's super duper clean. It's
he owns it?
I think so. So
the Grove is awesome.
Yeah, we should probably fact check that, but I think he does. So the thing is that the optics of this perfectly clean, like the most clean part of LA, and then kind of juxtaposing that against the rest of LA that's getting a little bit overrun, it's just the optics of it just feels good. Let's just make sure that I got that correct.
Caruso affiliated owns the Grove.
And the Grove is so beautiful, and everybody in LA loves it. So it's like this beautiful, clean place. So just seeing that is the perfect optics for somebody who cleaned it up.
I don't think there's anything that everyone in New York City loves. We have a couple
Central
of
Park.
malls.
Mm-hmm.
It's, yeah.
Central Park. I lived in New York City.
Central
I grew up in
Park.
New York City. I think
Yeah.
everyone loves Central Park.
Probably. That might be the only thing.
But the Grove is so clean. So it's this perfect, it's clean, it's orderly. Everybody in LA loves the Grove.
Not been to the Grove.
But now the cops arrest you and give you tickets if you're there past like 11 p.m. or 12 p.m. in New York City, Central Park, which is absolutely draconian.
Well, and we're back
insane.
to the thing where if you're a woman walking by yourself, you're not walking through the park after dark.
Yeah,
we are back to that. I was talking
can't.
to a friend of mine the other night, and she's like, I don't walk through McCarran Park after dark anymore.
Well, there was that
and
young
it used
woman.
to be no issue at all.
That young woman at where's it, Columbia?
Yeah.
Was it? She got
Yeah.
murdered by those like teenagers or whatever?
Yeah, and she's not the only one. I mean, teenagers are out there killing people. There was a young man on the subway, 14 years old, who was murdered by a gang of girls stealing his iPhone. Whoa. 14.
Well,
just this kid.
How did they murder him? Like
they stabbed him to death.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And he didn't know them. They were not at all connected.
Yeah, in New York City, when you need help from the cops, they're not there.
There are no
many
cops.
times
There's
so
no
many.
cops anywhere
there's so many
anymore.
instances.
No, hold on. When you are by Trump Tower and you want to complain about Black Lives Matter in the street, the police are there to arrest you.
They're
Yeah,
there
of
for
course.
that,
Yes,
sure.
yes. I was finishing my statement there, and particularly also talking about how if there's a ticket to be written, they're there. They're going to do it. But if you need help, I know multiple instances where people were getting shot, stabbed, or beaten, and the cops were literally standing by and watching, not doing anything, not intervening.
But we need to make sure that these violent criminals who are committing these crimes are let out of jail because it's only fair, right? I mean, a cash bail is holding someone unreasonably, right?
Yeah, there's a guy named Matt Belinsky.
No, I want an answer to this statement.
What?
If you have someone committing crimes in New York, should we extend to them our principles of letting them out of jail instead of, or should we hold them?
That's not the same argument.
I don't have that principle of letting people out of jail.
So
I think people should be locked up if they commit crimes.
But you got to prove it, right? You can't just arrest someone without proving it before a jury of their peers.
Okay, but
Do you believe that people should only be imprisoned if they're proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt?
Probably not. I think probably you should be able to sit in jail waiting for your trial if you're a violent person.
So not innocent
if you've
until proven
committed
guilty.
a violent crime.
So the idea is the government shouldn't be allowed to put you in jail unless they've proven you've committed a crime. But what we've done in society is we've recognized there's actually like a gradient here. It's not absolute. And that is, some people are so dangerous, we actually decide, even before we've proven it, we're going to remand them and not release them. Now, that's a challenge. I have an issue with that. Because my values are the government should not be able to put you in a box and lock it up unless they've proven beyond a reasonable doubt you've actually done something wrong. Because innocent people do suffer because of this. However, I also recognize letting people out in this regard results in rampant violent crime, and I don't know what the solution is. But I can tell you, cashless bail has only made things worse.
Yeah, they were supposed to do cashless bail only for non-violent offenders, and it hasn't really worked out that way because people will be let out of jail, and 2 days later they're back in because they've killed somebody.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen this happen in Chicago and New York and all over the place.
And that means the
Seattle.
solution is people get put in jail for extended periods of time because the system can't handle it, even if they're not proven guilty. That's a problem.
That is a problem. And the court system should work a lot faster. Like, you shouldn't be sitting there having a trial 2 years after you did the thing, or stuck in jail for the entire time.
But that's like, there was a story I saw where a Starbucks had huge lines going at the drive-thru into the street. So the city voted to ask Starbucks workers to work faster.
Oh, nice.
Like, if we don't have, if the city is so rife with crime and so dense that the court systems and the police can't actually properly adjudicate crimes, actually have bail hearings, then the whole system is just totally screwed up and busted. I don't even know how you fix it. Yep. So the problem we have now is our values, and this is what the progressives have been advocating for, in cities like LA, New York, and Chicago, and whatever, is you should not be able to imprison someone for any reason. I mean that in the colloquial sense, not the legal sense, unless you've proven it. And that includes a bail hearing. But because there's so much crime, you have people lined up and the judge is like, I don't have time for this. You remand, you're violent. Or a person's like, Your Honor, I argue he's not violent. Okay, fine, you can leave. No cash bail. Then they go murder people again. I think the problem is there is no, like, we can be as principled as we want to be. We have a very serious problem.
We do have a serious problem, and we have crime rising, even though we have Democrats telling us that that's just
it's
not
a conspiracy theory.
I'm mostly in big cities these days, and I was at Surfside Tacos last night here in DC, or just close to here, and we got shot at actually last night. I'm not even kidding. Pow, 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 pow. Everybody's hitting the ground. Last night, getting a taco. I'm like, wow, I'm gonna go out get a taco. What are my kids gonna think? No big deal. We all laughed it off, but it happened. Mom, my kids had to stop a robbery recently in Los Angeles, had to get in a fist fight, the mother of my kids. My buddy Sid got pistol whipped in New York and robbed for his watch right by a piano bar in New York.
Yeah, I know right where that is.
Then he got clocked by another crazy guy in WeHo in Los Angeles. You walk down the street in LA and there is a huge homeless encampments of tents that just run all down Sunset Boulevard.
Well,
I mean, it's getting crazy.
You can't walk down the street. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, you can't walk down the street. Like, all the encampments literally block you from walking down the sidewalk.
Yeah, you have to actually walk onto. Yeah, what he's saying, you have to walk onto Sunset Boulevard.
Yeah,
and then you walk by the encampments.
Yeah,
and they're nice. They haven't caused any problems. But what if I'm with my kids?
I'm not going to walk by that. Like, if I'm walking around the city, and I see like a bunch of homeless junkies like nodding off, I cross the street. I'm not going to walk by that. I'm not going to do it. I'm not walking by with my kid, and I'm not walking by myself. Like,
totally.
The risk reward scenario is it's just not there.
It's also just
hold on.
weird.
So, like, what do we do about this?
What do we do?
Do
about
we start
this?
arresting the open air drug markets?
We used to do that, right? So when Giuliani came into office in New York City in 93 or something like that, he started cleaning up the city by doing exactly that. He was just started arresting people for selling drugs, and it was pretty severe. And I remember at the time being like, "What is this? Why?" No. But the city turned into a paradise within about 15 years, and it was spectacular to live there.
Yeah,
it was very effective.
It sounds authoritarian.
It does sound authoritarian, but I mean, I think when you're talking about a big city, when you're talking about millions of people living on top of one another who need to have a safe place to walk and, safe streets, safe parks, safe places to walk around in to do their business and all of that.
And this is my argument.
Lock people up. But at this point, too, we have a much different situation because we've completely decriminalized marijuana.
And this is right. So this is my argument when it comes to people like Ethan and Kathy Griffin. When they're actively advocating against our rights to free speech, I say they're banned. Okay, good riddance. Like, if someone is innocent in New York City and they get arrested, I hope they are not held. And that's why I don't like the idea of cash bail. That a poor person who's in the wrong place at the wrong time gets arrested and the state is just like, too bad for you. Yeah. That's screwed up. Yeah. But now we see what happens when you have cashless bail. People are being pushed in front of subway trains.
People are being slashed.
So I don't know. Security versus freedom. I lean towards Second Amendment. The issue, however, is you want to err on the side of stop violence, meaning more innocent people get locked up, or err on the side of protecting the innocent, meaning more bad people go free. We tend to err on the side of bad people going free. But
we
at
have
a certain
situation
point,
now, too.
At a certain point, we just say, if we know the person is violent and actively sowing violence, destruction, we remand them. If you've got people like, these prominent leftists who are going to advocate against speech and cheer for censorship, we say remand them. When they get censored, I'm not letting them out. That can be adjudicated somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, we have a system that incentivizes crime, incentivizes some of the worst behaviors while making citizens defenseless. That's a major problem that, of course, we need to talk about more, because if people were able to defend themselves, if people weren't being prosecuted by George Soros district attorneys that punish people for self-defense, it would be a totally different landscape. If politicians and the school system and the education system weren't incentivizing a lot of this violent nonsense, I don't think we would be in this kind of system. So I think the problem is very complex. I think it can't just be solved in one simple conversation or in one simple phrase. But at the end of the day, I think the government's making it a lot worse than better.
And
more government wouldn't make it better, in my opinion.
I have an analogy that I used for Ian. Ian really loves this. He's into science. I was imagining living in New York City, and I was imagining when I did live there. I lived on Myrtle and Nostrand in this apartment building in a small, like 700 square foot box with people to my top, left, right, and behind me and below me. And then I was just like, man, I can't play music here. You can't. You can get an acoustic guitar and you can play during certain hours. You can't play drums.
Right.
You can get practice pads or maybe an electric kit and then put, headphones on or something. But you can't be noisy. And what I started to think was, as people get pushed closer, you have this, as an individual, you have this bubble of freedoms around you. As you get further and further away from other people, that bubble grows and grows and grows, where you're not impeding on anybody else's life. As you move closer and closer to people, the bubble starts getting pressed upon by other people's bubbles. So Ian loved it because I said it was like rural people are basically like gaseous, bouncing around all crazy, having all this freedom, having a good time. And then as you move closer and closer to the city, it becomes more solid, where you literally can't do anything. You can't be noisy. You can't be up too late. You can't blast the stereo.
You can't have your guns.
Can't have your guns. Can't cook stinky foods because there's too many people around you. You are solidified in this block that's rigid and controlled. And I think the problem is there is no ideological or policy solution to population density. There's none. You recognize that if you live in a big city, there's going to be too much crime because there's too many people, and the police and the courts won't be able to handle it properly. So I think it's fair to say there's no simple solution.
Well,
either you increase security or you
so
let
you live
crime
in a
run
city,
rampant.
You do give up a lot of
there's been an incentivized program within the last few decades pushing people to live in cities, wanting people to live on top of each other.
Yes.
I think that kind of lifestyle has been glorified. I think there's been a lot of manipulation to make it seem like it's trendy, like it's cool, like it's hip, when in reality, it's an absolute hellscape where police officers try to steal your money to generate revenue for the state, while, of course, making sure you're defenseless as the crackhead who stabs you, as they're literally sitting there watching you bleed out.
It doesn't have to be like that.
That's life in New York City. But that's life in New York City.
It wasn't like that before. It wasn't like that.
It wasn't like that in the 90s? Because I grew up in New York City in the 90s.
It was like that in the 90s.
Thank you, Libby. It was.
And then it changed and got better.
It got
and
more
now
authoritarian.
It's back to like that
Broken
again.
windows policing.
Yes, that's
and
right.
And crime dropped dramatically.
Stop and frisk.
Did it, or was it just the reporting? Because we also have to understand here, the New York City Police
People
Department
were not
manipulates
being pushed into
the
tracks
reporting.
like that.
Yes, of course. But I'm saying crime goes in waves. But
Yeah,
when there's a
that's
program, and there's been an epidemic of New York City police officers that have been downgrading particular crimes to make it seem like it's not a big issue. Yeah. Whether it's assaults, it was simple batteries. Whether it's robberies, it was just a small petty theft. And a lot of the times, police officers got caught lessening the crimes in order to make their precinct look like it was good and tough on crime, when in reality there was a lot of crime. And what essentially Giuliani did, he violated a lot of people's civil rights, but he also contained the crime in particular areas and essentially pushed it away. And it still continued, but it only continued in certain neighborhoods.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
They turned Manhattan into a glorious playground.
For the super rich.
Yes.
Yes.
And for those of us who wandered about in it.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.